Emotionally strong people still feel pain. They still feel anxious. They still have moments where everything feels heavy. Strength doesn't mean the absence of struggle. It means the absence of abandonment. The difference is what they do inside those moments. They don't turn against themselves. They don't panic because something hurts. They don't rush to escape the feeling just to feel normal again. Instead, they stay present. They allow the emotion to exist without immediately labeling it as a problem. They notice the tension in the body, the thoughts trying to explain everything, the urge to distract, suppress, or fix, and they don't obey it instantly. They listen to what they're feeling without demanding that it disappear. That quiet self-trust becomes a habit. Over time, that habit changes how the nervous system responds. Emotions rise, but they don't overwhelm. Discomfort appears, but it doesn't define the moment. Because the mind learns something new. I can feel this and still be safe. This isn't loud strength. It doesn't look impressive from the outside, but it's the kind that lasts. This audiobook isn't about becoming emotionally invincible. It's about becoming emotionally available to yourself. If these words resonate like this video, subscribe for deeper emotional clarity and share it with someone who needs reassurance right now. Strength isn't about shutting feelings down. It's about staying with yourself until they pass. Chapter 1. The quiet foundation. Most people think emotional strength is loud. They picture someone who never breaks, never shakes, never shows fear. They imagine steel in the voice, thunder in the posture, a person who dominates the room and wins every argument. But that's not emotional strength. That's performance. That's armor. And armor is heavy. Armor makes you rigid. Armor makes you tired. Real emotional strength is quieter than that. It's the person who can feel heat rise in their chest and still choose their next sentence carefully. It's the person who gets bad news, sits with it, and doesn't sprint into panic. It's the person who is disappointed but doesn't become destructive. It's the person who can be misunderstood and still speak with respect. Emotional strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's mastery over reaction. It's the steady hand on the wheel when the road turns slick. Let me tell you about a man named Aaron. Aaron didn't look like the kind of person you'd call powerful. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the loudest in meetings. He didn't brag about wins or put on a confident mask. He just showed up, did excellent work, and had this strange calmness that made people feel safe around him. You could bring him chaos and he would return clarity. One afternoon, a project collapsed. Weeks of work ruined by a client's last-minute change. The team was furious. One person slammed a notebook shut and muttered curses. Another started listing who should be blamed. Aaron listened to all of it calm, quiet, and then he stepped outside, not to escape, not to run, to regulate. He stood in the hallway and took 3 slow breaths, the kind that don't beg for relief but declare control. He didn't pretend he wasn't angry. He didn't deny it. He acknowledged it like a weather report. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. I'm tense. Then he asked himself one question that changed everything. What response helps the next 10 minutes? He came back in. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scold anyone. He didn't lecture about mindset. He simply said, we've got 2 options. We can spend our energy on blame or we can spend it on building the new plan. We'll discuss what happened later. Right now we move. Something shifted. Not because he was dramatic, because he was steady. That's the first silent habit of emotionally strong people. They build their foundation before the storm arrives. They don't wait until they're overwhelmed to learn how to breathe. They don't wait until they're angry to learn restraint. They don't wait until they're anxious to practice stability. They lay bricks every day in small moments. And when life hits hard, they don't collapse because they're standing on something real. Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Your emotions are trained by your daily environment. If your day is filled with noise, rushing, scrolling, conflict, and avoidance, you are teaching your nervous system to live on edge. You're building a mind that flinches. You're building a heart that reacts. You're building a body that stays tense even when nothing is happening. Emotionally strong people do the opposite. They become intentional about the baseline they return to. They create a default calm. Not because their lives are easier, but because they discipline their inner world. Think of your emotional life like a home. Most people live in a messy house and then wonder why they can't think clearly. They trip over clutter. They lose things. They feel frustrated all the time. Emotional strength begins when you start cleaning, one corner at a time, not to impress anyone, to breathe again. One quiet habit is how emotionally strong people start the day. They don't launch into the world with their mind already scattered. They don't pick up their phone first thing and let the news, messages, and other people's emergencies dictate their emotional temperature. They take a moment to choose their state before the world chooses it for them. It can be 60 seconds. Sit at the edge of the bed and say, "Today I will be steady," or "Today I will act with control," or "Today I won't give away my peace so cheaply." It's not magic, it's training. You're setting your direction. Another quiet habit is what emotionally strong people do when they feel emotions rising. Most people treat emotions like commands. If they feel angry, they speak angrily. If they feel afraid, they run. If they feel insecure, they seek validation. They assume the emotion is the truth. But emotions are often signals, not instructions. Emotionally strong people pause. They create space between feeling and doing. That space is power. Imagine you're holding a match in your hand. Anger is the flame. If you panic, you throw it into dry grass, fire everywhere. But if you breathe and hold still, the flame burns out. The match becomes harmless. The same energy that could have destroyed something becomes nothing more than a moment that passed. This is not about suppressing emotions. Suppression is stuffing a screaming child into a closet and pretending the house is quiet. Eventually, the door shakes. Eventually, it comes out louder. Emotional strength isn't burying feelings. It's containing them with intelligence. Aaron used a simple rule. When tension rose, he would delay his response by 10 seconds. 10 seconds, that's all. In those 10 seconds, he took one breath and asked himself, "What am I about to do that I'll regret?" Not "What do I feel?" He knew what he felt. He asked what action would create damage. Then he chose differently. 10 seconds doesn't sound heroic, but 10 seconds can save friendships. 10 seconds can save careers. 10 seconds can save your dignity. Now let's talk about the habit nobody sees but everybody feels when they're around it. Emotionally strong people do not chase emotional drama. They don't feed it. They don't entertain it. They don't make a hobby out of complaining. They don't rehearse their pain for an audience. They don't turn minor problems into identity. When something goes wrong, they acknowledge it, address what can be addressed, and move forward. They don't sit in circles of gossip that poison their spirit. They don't get high on outrage. They don't bond with people through negativity. That doesn't mean they are cold or detached. It means they protect their attention like it's sacred, because it is. Your attention is your life. What you focus on grows. What you repeatedly focus on becomes your personality. What you obsess over becomes your mood, your tone, your decisions, your future. If you want emotional strength, you must become allergic to unnecessary chaos. This is where practical discipline comes in. If your phone is the first thing you touch every morning, change it. If social media makes you anxious or irritated, limit it. If certain conversations leave you drained, reduce them. If you constantly put yourself around people who live in reaction, you will start reacting too. Emotional strength isn't only built inside you. It's protected by what you allow near you. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There's another silent habit that looks simple, but it separates the stable from the unstable. Emotionally strong people tell themselves the truth early. Weakness often comes from delay. Delay in honesty. Delay in taking responsibility. Delay in admitting something hurts. Delay in admitting a mistake. Delay in facing the reality of a situation. Emotionally strong people don't delay. They don't drag pain behind them like a chain for months. They face what's real while it's still manageable. A woman named Mira learned this the hard way. Mira was in a relationship that looked perfect to everyone else. The photos were happy. The posts were sweet. The plans sounded exciting. But behind the scenes, she was constantly walking on eggshells. Every small disagreement became a battlefield. Every concern she raised was dismissed. She told herself she was being too sensitive. She told herself it would get better. She told herself love meant endurance. But emotionally strong people understand something. Endurance without truth is self-betrayal. One night, after another exhausting argument, Mira did something different. She didn't beg. She didn't lash out. She didn't try to win. She simply sat in silence, felt the weight of the reality she'd been avoiding, and admitted to herself, "This is not safe for my spirit." That sentence didn't fix everything in a moment, but it changed her posture inside her own life. Truth became her anchor. And once you anchor to truth, you stop being dragged by illusion. Emotional strength grows the moment you stop lying to yourself, because every lie you accept demands more energy to maintain. Every truth you accept frees you. This is the foundation. The quiet foundation. It's not glamorous. It doesn't get applause. It doesn't look impressive on the outside, but it makes you unshakable on the inside. So what do you do starting today? You build your baseline. You choose a calm return point. You create small rituals that steady you. You stop reacting like every feeling is a command. You pause before you respond. You reduce unnecessary chaos. You tell yourself the truth early. And you remember this: emotionally strong people are not people who never feel pain. They are people who feel it, respect it, and refuse to let it drive the car. The world will test you. People will misunderstand you. Plans will collapse. Criticism will come. Disappointment will arrive without knocking. That's not a flaw in your life. That's life. But you don't have to be a victim of your own reactions. You can be steady. You can be disciplined. You can be the kind of person who remains grounded, not because nothing shakes you, but because you refuse to surrender your power. So let this land quietly in you, not as motivation that fades by tomorrow, but as a decision that begins now. When you feel the next wave of emotion rise, will you treat it as a command or a signal? When stress tries to hijack your day, what baseline will you return to? And what truth have you been delaying that, once faced, could finally set you free? Chapter 2. The power of the pause in the last chapter, you learned what emotional strength really looks like when no one is watching. You saw how calm isn't a personality trait. It's a baseline built through daily choices. You witnessed how a few seconds of control can protect relationships, careers, and your self-respect, and how telling yourself the truth early keeps you from dragging pain behind you for years. Now we go deeper because the pause isn't just a moment. It's a lifestyle. It's the quiet space where emotionally strong people separate who they are from what they feel. There's a kind of strength that doesn't show up in loud speeches or dramatic comebacks. It shows up in what someone refuses to do. It shows up in what they don't say. The text message they don't send. The argument they don't escalate. The bitter comment they don't throw like a knife. The emotional storm they don't invite into their home. Most people think power is action, but emotional strength begins with restraint. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff with a heavy backpack. Anger fills the bag with stones. Fear fills it with bricks. Shame fills it with metal scraps. Every emotion you refuse to regulate becomes weight you carry into every conversation, every decision, every room you enter. Then one day you snap, not because the moment was too big, but because you were already overloaded. Emotionally strong people lighten the load as they go. They don't carry unnecessary weight. They notice the bag getting heavy and they stop. They open it. They remove what doesn't belong. That's the pause, not a weak pause, not hesitation, not avoidance. The pause is a choice. The pause is discipline. The pause is emotional authority. Let me tell you about a woman named Nisha. Nisha was smart, hardworking, dependable, but she had a hidden problem. Her emotions ran faster than her wisdom. If someone criticized her, she defended herself. If someone ignored her message, she assumed disrespect. If someone looked distracted in a conversation, she took it personally. She didn't mean to be reactive, it just happened. One day she was in a meeting when her manager corrected her in front of the team. It wasn't cruel, but it was sharp. Nisha felt it instantly, like heat crawling up her neck. Her mind went straight to revenge. She wanted to snap back and make him regret it. She wanted to prove she wasn't weak. She opened her mouth. And then she paused. It wasn't a perfect pause. It was messy. Her throat tightened. Her pride screamed. But she remembered one rule she had started practicing. Don't let a temporary emotion create a permanent consequence. So she breathed, not visibly, not theatrically. Just one controlled breath that told her body, you work for me, not the other way around. Then she said calmly, understood, I'll adjust it. Later, when the meeting ended, her manager pulled her aside and apologized. He admitted he could have handled it differently. And he respected her composure more than she knew. That one pause did more than save a moment. It changed how people saw her. More importantly, it changed how she saw herself. Emotional strength grows when you collect evidence that you can trust yourself. Most people don't trust themselves, and they don't even realize it. They don't trust what they'll say when angry. They don't trust what they'll do when hurt. They don't trust how they'll behave when they feel rejected. So they live with an invisible fear of their own reactions, and that fear makes them more reactive. Emotionally strong people build self-trust by practicing the pause until it becomes identity. Here's the problem. Many people confuse emotion with truth. They feel disrespected, so they believe they were disrespected. They feel abandoned, so they believe they were abandoned. They feel judged, so they believe someone is judging them. Feelings are powerful, but feelings are not always accurate. Sometimes they're old wounds speaking in a new room. So emotionally strong people develop a silent habit. They check the story before they act on it. Every emotion comes with a story. The story is the meaning your mind attaches to what happened, and your reaction is usually not to what happened but to the story. Someone doesn't reply quickly and the story becomes, "They don't value me." Someone forgets something important and the story becomes, "I don't matter." Someone challenges your idea and the story becomes, "They're trying to embarrass me." But the truth might be different. They were busy. They were distracted. They misunderstood. They were stressed. They were human. Emotionally strong people don't deny their feelings. They question their interpretation. They ask themselves, what else could this mean? That question is a mental weapon. It breaks the hypnotic grip of the first story your mind invents. It pulls you out of assumption and back into choice. This is not about being naive. It's about being accurate. Let's bring this into real life. Picture a couple, Rohan and Sana. Rohan comes home late. Sana is already irritated. The emotion rises fast. Her mind tells her the story. He doesn't care. He's selfish. He always chooses work over me. The old version of Sana would attack the moment he stepped in. She would unload frustration that had been brewing all evening. Rohan would get defensive. The night would become war. But Sana has started practicing emotional strength. She pauses. She doesn't swallow her feelings, she holds them. She asks herself, what else could this mean? Rohan walks in and looks exhausted. His eyes are heavier than usual. He doesn't even take off his shoes properly. He just sits down, staring at nothing. Sana still feels hurt, but now she doesn't confuse hurt with proof. She sits next to him and says, "You look drained. Are you okay?" Rohan exhales like he's been holding his breath all day. He tells her a colleague's family emergency had crashed the schedule. He stayed late to help cover it. He didn't message because he was moving nonstop. He didn't come home late because he doesn't care. He came home late because he was carrying more than usual. Sana could have punished him for an assumption. Instead, she met him with clarity. And because she did, he felt safe enough to be honest. That's what emotional strength creates: safety. For you and for the people you love. Now let's make it practical, because emotional strength without practice is just a pretty idea. The pause has 3 levels, and the silent habit is learning all 3. The first level is physical. It starts in your body. When emotion hits, your body changes before your logic catches up. Your breathing shortens, your muscles tighten, your jaw locks, your shoulders lift, your heart speeds up. Your body is preparing for battle. And if you don't interrupt that pattern, your mouth will follow the body's urgency. So the first habit is this: change your breathing before you change your words. Inhale slowly through your nose. Exhale longer than you inhale. Do it once. Do it twice if you need. You're not trying to calm down for comfort. You're calming down for control, because calm is leverage. The second level is mental. It's the story check. Ask yourself 3 questions, quickly and silently. What am I assuming right now? What else could be true? What response would make me proud tomorrow? That's the pause turning into intelligence. The third level is behavioral. It's delaying the action that could damage your life. Emotionally strong people don't always respond instantly. They don't treat every message like it demands an immediate reply. They don't treat every disrespect like it needs a comeback. They don't treat every irritation like it deserves a confrontation. Sometimes the strongest move is silence, not the silent treatment, not withdrawal. Silence as strategy, because when you delay, the emotion loses its grip. The heat cools, the urge softens, the mind returns, and then you can respond like a leader instead of reacting like a wounded child. This doesn't mean you let things slide forever. Emotional strength doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you handle it with skill. A controlled response is stronger than an explosive reaction. There's a man named Vikram who learned this in a painful way. He used to be the kind of person who fought back instantly. If someone disrespected him, he escalated. If someone criticized him, he attacked their character. He thought he was protecting his pride, but he was really exposing his insecurity. One day, in a crowded place, someone pushed past him and muttered something rude. Vikram exploded. He grabbed the person, shouted, caused a scene. People stared. The other person was shocked. Security got involved. The situation became bigger than it should have ever been. Later, Vikram sat alone, embarrassed. Not because he cared what strangers thought, but because he realized he had been controlled by a stranger's moment. That's the trap. When you react impulsively, you hand over your remote control. Emotionally strong people don't give strangers the power to decide their behavior. Vikram changed by practicing one simple rule. I will not react in public the way I wouldn't want my future self to remember. He started pausing. He started letting small things pass without needing to win, and something surprising happened. His life became quieter, not boring, powerful, cleaner, stronger. Here's the deeper truth. The pause is not just to avoid conflict. The pause is to protect your identity, because your identity is shaped by repeated choices. If you repeatedly choose reaction, you become reactive. If you repeatedly choose control, you become controlled. If you repeatedly choose discipline, you become disciplined. Every time you pause, you're voting for the person you want to be. And emotionally strong people understand that their emotions are guests, not rulers. Guests are allowed to enter. Guests are allowed to speak, but guests don't own the house. You do. So when anger arrives, you don't throw it out. You say, I see you. I understand why you came, but you're not driving today. When fear arrives, you don't insult yourself for feeling it. You say, I hear you. You're trying to protect me, but I'm choosing courage anyway. That is emotional strength. Calm authority over the inner world. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now listen closely, because this is where the pause becomes your weapon in the real world. The next time you feel triggered, don't rush to prove yourself. Don't rush to defend your pride. Don't rush to explain. Pause, feel the emotion in your body without becoming it. Name it silently: anger, hurt, fear, embarrassment. Then give yourself 2 seconds of distance. In those 2 seconds, you are no longer a puppet. You are a decision maker. And then choose a response that serves your future, not your impulse. Sometimes that response is calm words. Sometimes it's a firm boundary. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's saying, I need a moment to think. Sometimes it's choosing not to reply at all, but it's always chosen, never forced. That's the difference between emotional strength and emotional luck. Luck is when you happen to feel stable. Strength is when you choose stability even when you don't feel like it. So ask yourself honestly, where do you lose your power most often? Is it when you feel disrespected, when you feel ignored, when you feel criticized, when you feel rejected? And what would change in your life if you mastered the pause right there, at the exact point where you normally react? If you became the kind of person who could breathe through the heat, question the story, and respond with control, who would you become, and what would finally become possible for you? Chapter 3. Unseen Boundaries, unbreakable peace, you've already learned that emotional strength isn't loud. It's built in quiet moments long before life tests you. You've seen how the pause turns a reaction into a choice, and how checking the story behind the feeling can save you from damaging your future. Now it's time to talk about the next silent habit, the one that decides how much of your life you actually own. Emotionally strong people don't just control their reactions, they control their access. Most people don't realize this, but they live like they have no doors, no locks, no walls. Anyone can walk into their day with a bad mood, an opinion, a demand, a crisis, a criticism, and immediately take over their mind. Their peace gets raided without permission. Their focus gets stolen without warning. Their energy gets drained by people who don't even notice. Emotionally strong people live differently. They have boundaries you can't see but you can feel. They don't announce them dramatically. They don't threaten people. They don't turn it into a speech. They simply move with quiet certainty and life adjusts around them. Not because they're cold, but because they're clear. They understand something most people learn too late. Your emotional life is shaped by what you tolerate. Let me tell you about Samir. Samir was the kind of person everyone leaned on. At first, it sounded like a compliment. People called him reliable, supportive, always there. But over time, the truth showed itself. People didn't lean on him, they leaned into him. They unloaded their stress on him, used his time, expected instant replies, demanded explanations, dragged him into drama, and walked away lighter while he stayed heavy. Samir kept thinking that being strong meant being available. He thought being good meant saying yes. He thought love meant unlimited access. Then one day, after a long week, he got a call late at night. A friend was upset, ranting, spiraling, pulling Samir into a storm that didn't belong to him. Samir listened, trying to be helpful, trying to say the right things. But as the call went on, he felt something else rising. Not anger, not annoyance, resentment. And resentment is a warning sign. It's your inner self saying you're giving away too much of your life. He ended the call and sat in silence. He realized he wasn't exhausted because he had done too much work. He was exhausted because he had lived all week inside other people's emotions. That night he made a decision, not a dramatic one, a disciplined one. He decided that his peace would no longer be negotiable. So he started doing something emotionally strong people do all the time but rarely talk about. He stopped explaining himself to people who weren't entitled to his energy. He didn't argue. He didn't justify. He didn't over-apologize. He simply said things like, "I can't talk right now," or "I'll call tomorrow," or "I'm not available for that." And then he stayed steady through the discomfort of someone not liking it. That's the part most people fail. They set a boundary, then fold the moment someone reacts. Emotionally strong people understand that boundaries are not proven by what you say. They are proven by what you allow after you've said it. At first, Samir felt guilty. His mind tried to drag him back into the old pattern. It whispered, "You're being selfish. You're being rude. You're changing." Yes, he was changing. And that was the point. Because emotional strength requires a new identity. You cannot become emotionally strong while keeping the habits that made you emotionally exhausted. Here's a truth that will sharpen you if you let it. People will always ask for more access than they deserve. Not always maliciously. Sometimes out of habit. Sometimes out of need. Sometimes because they've never met someone who knows how to say no with peace. But it's still your responsibility to protect your life. Boundaries are the bridge between self-respect and emotional stability. When you don't have boundaries, your emotions are constantly being triggered by situations you shouldn't even be involved in. You become a dumping ground. You become an emotional sponge. You absorb everyone's tension, everyone's negativity, everyone's chaos, and then you wonder why you're tired, irritable, distracted, and empty. Emotionally strong people do not absorb what they didn't create. They witness without carrying. They listen without drowning. They support without sacrificing. This is not selfishness. It's maturity. Let's break down what unseen boundaries actually look like. They look like not replying immediately just because someone expects it. They look like letting a message sit while you finish your work. They look like turning your phone over during a conversation so you can be present. They look like leaving a discussion the moment it turns disrespectful. They look like refusing to argue with someone who wants a fight, not a solution. They look like saying no without turning it into a full explanation. Because over-explaining is a hidden weakness. It's the need for permission. It's the fear of being misunderstood. It's the need to be liked more than you need to be at peace. Emotionally strong people would rather be respected than constantly approved. A woman named Layla once said something that stayed with me. She said, "I used to think boundaries were walls. Now I realize they're gates. I decide what enters." Leela had a family member who had a habit of criticizing everything: the career choices, the clothes, the way she spoke, the way she lived. It was constant, and it always came dressed as concern. For years, Leela tolerated it and called it love. After every visit, she felt smaller. But she kept going back into the same room, letting the same words hit the same wounds, and then acting surprised that she was bleeding. One day, the criticism started again, and Leela did something new. She didn't defend, she didn't argue, she didn't try to win. She simply said, calm and steady, "I'm not accepting comments about my life choices anymore. If it continues, I'll leave." There was silence, shock. Then the pushback came. "You're so sensitive, I'm just trying to help." Leela didn't react. She paused, held her ground, and repeated, "I'm not accepting it." The criticism continued. So she stood up, smiled politely, and left. That was it. No war, no drama, no speech, just action. For weeks afterward, Leela's mind replayed it. The guilt tried to return. The old conditioning tried to pull her back into obedience. But she remembered something emotionally strong people never forget. Discomfort is temporary, but self-betrayal stays. The next time she visited, the tone was different. Not perfect, but different. People adjust when they realize you're serious. And if they don't adjust, you adjust your access. That's emotional strength. Now listen carefully. Boundaries are not only about people, they're also about your own habits. Emotionally strong people set boundaries with themselves. They don't let their mind speak to them like an enemy. They don't let their impulses run their schedule. They don't let their cravings dictate their mood. They don't let fatigue turn into laziness that becomes a lifestyle. They don't let one bad moment become a bad day that becomes a bad week. They draw lines inside their own head. They refuse to rehearse arguments in their mind for hours. They refuse to replay disrespect on a loop until it becomes poison. They refuse to stalk someone's life online and feed insecurity. They refuse to keep checking for validation like it's oxygen. Because emotional strength is not only how you handle the world, it's how you govern your inner world when nobody can stop you. One of the most powerful boundaries you can set is this: I do not entertain thoughts that make me smaller. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every feeling deserves your loyalty. Not every fear deserves a seat at the table. Emotionally strong people understand that a mind without boundaries becomes a battlefield, so they practice mental discipline. When a thought shows up that says you're not enough, they don't debate it for 2 hours. They don't collapse under it. They recognize it as a visitor, not a ruler. They say, I see you, but you're not in charge. Then they redirect their focus to something useful. That redirection is a boundary. When a thought says they don't care about you, they don't immediately believe it. They check the story. They pause. They step back. They choose an adult response instead of a wounded reaction. When a thought says you should quit, they ask, is this exhaustion talking or truth talking? That's a boundary too. Here, what this looks like in daily life. You wake up tired. Your mind says today is going to be terrible. Emotional weakness agrees. Emotional strength challenges it. Emotional strength says, no, today will be handled with discipline. You make a mistake. Your mind says you always ruin things. Emotional weakness accepts it. Emotional strength corrects it. Emotional strength says, I made a mistake and I will learn, that's it. Someone disappoints you. Your mind says you can't trust anyone. Emotional weakness builds walls. Emotional strength builds boundaries. Emotional strength says, I can trust carefully and I can protect myself without becoming bitter. This is how emotionally strong people stay steady. Not by controlling the entire world, but by controlling what gets permission to shape them. Because if you don't choose your boundaries, life will choose your burdens. There's a certain kind of freedom that comes when you stop living as if everyone's comfort is your responsibility. Emotionally strong people help others, but they don't abandon themselves to do it. They show up, but they don't self-destruct. They love, but they don't surrender their dignity. They forgive, but they don't forget the lesson. Forgiveness without boundaries is how you get hurt again. Kindness without boundaries is how you get used. Patience without boundaries is how you waste years. This is why emotionally strong people aren't endlessly available. They're intentionally available. They decide where their energy goes. They decide what conversations deserve them. They decide what environments they will not stay in. They decide what behaviors they will not tolerate, even from people they care about. And the strongest part is this: they don't need to be angry to enforce it. They enforce it calmly. That calm enforcement is what makes it powerful. Because when you're calm, you're not negotiating with emotion. You're operating from identity. You're saying, this is who I am now. So here's your challenge. Stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure. Start measuring your strength by what you refuse to carry. You do not need to carry everyone's disappointment. You do not need to carry everyone's expectations. You do not need to carry every invitation to drama. You do not need to carry guilt for protecting your mind. Your peace is not a luxury. It's a requirement. And once you start protecting it, everything changes. Your relationships get clearer. Your work gets sharper. Your confidence grows quieter, deeper, more real. You stop being tossed around by other people's moods because you're no longer living in open access. You have gates now. You have standards now. You have stability now. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now take a moment and look at your life with honest eyes. Where have you been giving people access they haven't earned? What conversations keep draining you? And why do you keep returning to them? What behaviors have you been tolerating that are quietly training you to accept less than you deserve? And inside your own mind, what thoughts have been living there rent-free, shaping your mood, shrinking your confidence, and stealing your focus. If you strengthen your boundaries today, what would you finally have the energy to build tomorrow? Chapter 4. They don't argue with reality so far. You've seen that emotional strength is built quietly, long before pressure arrives. You learned how a small pause can stop a single moment from turning into lasting damage, and how boundaries protect your peace by controlling access to your life and your mind. Now it's time to face the habit that separates people who recover fast from people who stay stuck for years. Emotionally strong people don't waste energy arguing with reality. That might sound simple, but it's one of the rarest forms of discipline on earth. Most suffering isn't caused by what happens. It's caused by what you demand should have happened instead. You lose something and your mind says, this shouldn't be happening. Someone disappoints you and your mind says, they shouldn't be like this. Life shifts and your mind says it shouldn't be changing. And every time you say should, you begin a fight you can't win. Reality doesn't negotiate. Reality doesn't care how offended you feel. It doesn't pause because you're tired. It doesn't rewrite itself because you deserve better. It simply is. And the emotionally strong person understands that peace begins where resistance ends. Let me tell you about Rahul. Rahul built his identity around one plan, one career path, one timeline, one version of life that made him feel in control. He worked hard, stayed disciplined, kept his promises, and expected life to reward him for it. And for a while it did. Then everything shifted. The company he was working for restructured. His role vanished. The opportunity he had been aiming toward for years disappeared in a single email. No warning, no apology, no chance to negotiate, just gone. Rahul didn't just lose a job, he lost his certainty. He lost the story he had built about himself. At first, he did what most people do. He fought reality like it was a person he could intimidate. He replayed the unfairness. He obsessed over the timing. He argued with the past. He imagined different outcomes and tortured himself with them. He kept saying, "This shouldn't have happened." His friends noticed how bitter he became, not because he was weak, but because he was stuck in a war with what already happened. Then something quiet happened. One morning, he woke up with an exhaustion that didn't feel like lack of sleep. It felt like spiritual fatigue, the kind that comes from carrying what can't be changed. He sat on the edge of his bed, stared at the floor, and said out loud, "It happened." Just that. No drama, no tears, no motivational speech. A simple statement of fact. It happened. And in that sentence, something loosened inside him. Because the moment he stopped arguing with reality, he regained access to his power. Emotionally strong people are not people who avoid pain. They are people who stop multiplying pain with resistance. Pain is inevitable. Resistance is optional. When reality hits you, you have two choices. You can suffer once by feeling the pain directly, or you can suffer repeatedly by replaying it, resenting it, denying it, and dragging it through your mind every day like a chain. The emotionally strong person chooses to suffer once. They let the pain be clean. They let it be honest. They let it pass through instead of turning into a permanent identity. Rahul started practicing a silent habit that changed everything: acceptance without surrender. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what happened. It means you stop wasting energy pretending it didn't. It means you stop giving the past your attention like it's going to change out of respect. Acceptance is the moment you say, "This is the situation I'm in. Now what?" That "now what" is where emotional strength lives. Because emotionally strong people don't ask, "Why me?" for long. They ask, "What's next?" They don't stay trapped in the courtroom of life trying to prove that reality was wrong. They step out of the courtroom and back into the training ground. They stop seeking fairness and start seeking forward motion. Rahul didn't become calm overnight. He still felt anger. He still felt fear. But he stopped feeding it with imaginary battles. He stopped writing speeches in his head to people who were never going to apologize. He stopped creating a fantasy timeline where life stayed predictable. Instead, he wrote down one sentence every morning. This is what is true today. Some days the sentence was painful. I don't know what's next. Some days it was raw. I feel embarrassed. Some days it was strong. I will rebuild. But it was always honest. And honesty is grounding. Honesty brings you back to the present, and the present is the only place you can move. Here's the part most people don't understand. Emotional weakness isn't crying. Emotional weakness isn't feeling upset. Emotional weakness is refusing to adapt. Because the world will adapt without you. Relationships change. Money changes, health changes, opportunities change, people change, your body changes, your plans change, your heart changes. Life is movement. Emotionally strong people don't cling to an old version of life and demand that it come back. They grieve it, learn from it, and evolve. They respect change the way a sailor respects the sea. You don't argue with waves, you adjust the sail. That's the metaphor. That's the mentality. If you're arguing with reality, you're trying to stop the ocean with your hands. It's not noble, it's not strong, it's exhausting. Now let's get personal. Some of the hardest realities are not external. They're internal, a mistake you made, a pattern you keep repeating, a truth about yourself you've been avoiding, an emotional wound that still bleeds when touched. Emotionally strong people don't hide from these realities. They face them early, the way you face a small fire before it becomes a blaze. They don't say, I'm just like this. They say, this is what I've been doing and I can change it. They don't blame everyone for their emotional instability. They take responsibility for their emotional hygiene. That's not self-hate, that's self-respect. Responsibility is not a punishment. Responsibility is a key. The moment you take responsibility, you regain control. A man named Farid learned this when his relationship ended. He wasn't a bad person, but he had one habit that kept destroying his connections. He would shut down whenever conflict appeared. Not because he didn't care, but because he feared emotional intensity. He avoided hard conversations. He delayed truth. He went quiet and hoped problems would disappear. They didn't. His partner left, tired of being alone inside the relationship. Farid was crushed. At first, he blamed her. He blamed timing. He blamed stress. He blamed everything except the one truth that mattered. Then he sat with himself and admitted, I have to change. That admission was the turning point, not because it erased pain, but because it stopped the excuse. Emotionally strong people do not allow pain to become an excuse to stay the same. They let pain become fuel. Farid started doing something brave. He stopped running from discomfort. He practiced staying present during emotionally intense moments, not perfectly but consistently. He began telling the truth faster. He began listening without defending. He began repairing quickly instead of disappearing. And slowly his relationships changed. His confidence changed. His internal world became less tense because he wasn't constantly avoiding himself anymore. That's what acceptance does. Acceptance removes the need to hide. Now here's the quiet habit inside the habit, and it's one of the most powerful things you can do. Emotionally strong people separate what happened from what it means. What happened is data. What it means is interpretation. And most people destroy themselves with interpretation. They don't just lose a job. They decide it means they're a failure. They don't just get rejected. They decide it means they're unlovable. They don't just make a mistake. They decide it means they'll never get it right. Emotionally strong people don't do that. They let the event be the event, then they choose meaning that builds them instead of breaks them. Rahul lost his role, but he didn't let it become a verdict on his worth. He let it become a redirection, a moment that forced him to grow skills he had avoided, to explore paths he hadn't considered, to build strength that comfort would never have demanded. This is not pretending everything is good. This is refusing to let hardship make you smaller. There's a difference between optimism and delusion. Emotional strength isn't delusion. It's discipline in meaning. It's saying, I won't waste this. When you say that, your pain becomes productive. You stop asking for life to rewind and you start asking what life is trying to teach you now. And then you do the most emotionally strong thing a person can do. You act, not because you feel ready, not because you feel fearless, not because you feel confident. You act because action is how you prove to your nervous system that you are safe in your own hands. Rahul didn't wait for motivation. He created structure. He woke up early. He updated his skills. He reached out to people. He made a plan. He took interviews. He handled rejection without collapsing. He treated every setback like training. That's the mindset shift. Emotionally strong people don't need life to be easy to be steady. They bring steadiness to life. Now apply this to your own reality. There might be something you're still arguing with, a breakup you won't accept, a loss you keep resisting, a truth you keep avoiding, a responsibility you keep postponing. And every day you fight it, you lose energy you could be using to build. So today, stop negotiating with what already happened. Stop begging the past to change. Stop punishing yourself with should have. Stop wasting your present trying to rewrite history. Say it plainly the way Rahul did. It happened. And then say the next sentence that emotionally strong people live by. Now I move. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So what reality have you been resisting that is quietly draining your life? What would change if you accepted it without surrendering your future to it? If you stopped letting what happened define what it means about you, what new meaning would you choose instead? And if you decided today that you will not waste this, what powerful action would you take next, even before you feel ready? Chapter 5. They train in the dark. You've learned that emotional strength is built in quiet discipline, not loud performance. You've seen how the pause creates power, how boundaries protect your peace, and how acceptance stops you from wasting years arguing with reality. Now we move into the habit that most people never master because it doesn't give instant rewards and nobody applauds it. Emotionally strong people train in the dark. That means they practice stability when it doesn't matter. They rehearse control when there's nothing at stake. They build character when no one is watching. They don't wait for life to pressure them into growth. They create pressure on purpose in private so they don't collapse in public. Most people train for comfort. They build lives that avoid discomfort, avoid uncertainty, avoid difficult emotions. They stay busy so they don't have to sit with themselves. They entertain themselves so they don't have to face their own thoughts. They keep noise in the background so silence doesn't expose what's unresolved. But emotionally strong people do the opposite. They lean into silence until it stops feeling like a threat. They face their inner world until it stops feeling like a stranger. They practice hard things until their nervous system learns, I can handle this. Let me tell you about a boxer named Daniel. Daniel wasn't the most talented fighter in the gym. He didn't have the fastest hands or the strongest frame, but he had something else. When sparring got intense and others started breathing wild and panicking, Daniel stayed calm. When he got hit, he didn't fall apart. When he got cornered, he didn't rush into desperation. People assumed he was fearless. He was. He was trained. One night after everyone left, a coach walked back into the gym and saw Daniel alone. No crowd, no music, no friends cheering him on. Just Daniel and the heavy bag moving slowly, repeating the same combinations again and again with perfect form. The coach asked him why he stayed so late. Daniel didn't say anything dramatic. He said, "Because the fight doesn't care what I feel, so I'm training myself to stay steady." That sentence is emotional strength. The fight doesn't care what you feel. Life doesn't care what you feel. It cares what you do. Emotionally strong people respect their feelings, but they don't worship them. They understand feelings are weather, they come and go, but your standards must stay. Daniel didn't train only when he felt motivated. He trained when he felt bored. He trained when he felt tired. He trained when he felt frustrated. And that's why he looked calm during the fight. Because the fight wasn't the first time he had been uncomfortable. He had chosen discomfort 1,000 times before. That's what training in the dark means. Now let's bring it back to you. Most emotional breakdowns are not caused by one huge event. They're caused by an untrained nervous system meeting pressure. Your body doesn't know what to do with conflict. Your mind doesn't know what to do with uncertainty. Your heart doesn't know what to do with disappointment. So you spiral, not because you're broken, but because you're unpracticed. Emotionally strong people practice. They don't just learn concepts, they rehearse them. They train their nervous system like an athlete trains muscle. One of the silent habits they use is controlled exposure to discomfort. That means they choose small challenges on purpose so they become familiar with discomfort instead of fearing it. They take cold showers not because it's trendy, but because it trains their mind to stay calm when the body wants to panic. They wake up early not because they love mornings, but because it builds self-trust. They keep promises to themselves even when nobody knows, because integrity is built in private. They practice leaving their phone alone for an hour, not because they hate entertainment, but because they refuse to be controlled by craving. They practice sitting in silence for 10 minutes, not because they're trying to be mystical, but because they're training their mind not to run away from itself. When you avoid discomfort, discomfort grows. When you face discomfort, it shrinks. That's the law. Another silent habit emotionally strong people build in the dark is emotional naming. Most people are controlled by emotions because they can't identify them clearly. Everything becomes stress. Everything becomes anger. Everything becomes anxiety. And when you don't know what you're feeling, you can't manage it. It becomes a fog that controls the whole room. Emotionally strong people get specific. They don't just say, "I'm angry." They say, "I'm disappointed," or "I feel disrespected," or "I feel ignored," or "I feel embarrassed," or "I'm afraid of failing," or "I'm afraid of being judged." That specificity is power. Because once you name it, you can guide it. You can address the real need underneath it. A woman named Tara used this to change her life. Tara used to think she had anger issues. She would snap at her family, get irritated quickly, and feel guilty afterward. She kept thinking she was just an angry person. But one day she stopped and asked herself a better question. What am I really feeling? The answer surprised her. She wasn't angry. She was overwhelmed. She wasn't furious. She was exhausted. She wasn't short-tempered. She was carrying too much without rest, without support, without boundaries. So instead of trying to stop being angry, she addressed the real issue. She simplified her schedule. She started saying no. She started sleeping earlier. She stopped taking on responsibilities that weren't hers. And her anger problem began to fade because it was never the true problem. It was a symptom. That's emotional strength. It's not fighting your emotions. It's understanding them. But this understanding doesn't happen automatically. It comes from training in the dark. It comes from sitting down at the end of a day and reviewing your emotional patterns like a professional. Emotionally strong people do a quiet audit. They ask themselves, when did I lose control today? Not to shame themselves, to learn, to sharpen, to improve. They ask, what triggered me? What story did I tell myself? What did I need in that moment? What would a stronger response look like next time? This is how growth becomes inevitable, because you stop repeating the same day over and over. You stop living on autopilot. You become deliberate. Another silent habit is something emotionally strong people do when they're hurt. They don't immediately run to distractions. They sit with the pain long enough to hear what it's trying to say. Most people are terrified of emotional pain because they think pain will swallow them, so they escape. They eat, they scroll, they drink, they joke, they chase attention. They jump into another relationship. They do anything except sit still and feel the truth. But emotions don't disappear because you ignore them. They just find new ways to express themselves. They become bitterness. They become numbness. They become sudden outbursts. They become chronic stress in the body. Emotionally strong people process pain the way you process food. Slowly, honestly, without panic. They don't rush to get over it. They get through it. They allow grief to be grief. They allow disappointment to be disappointment. They allow anger to be anger but contained. They don't pretend to be okay when they're not. They don't collapse into victimhood either. They stay present with the emotion until it softens. This is why emotionally strong people don't need constant validation. They are not running away from themselves. They can sit alone and still feel steady. And that steadiness is built in the dark. Now listen. Training in the dark also means doing the boring work of discipline. It means going to bed on time. It means eating in a way that supports your brain. It means moving your body, not for appearance but for mental resilience. Your emotional life is not separate from your physical habits. A tired body makes a reactive mind. A neglected body makes an anxious mind. A constantly overstimulated brain makes an unstable mood. Emotionally strong people respect the body as the foundation of emotional control. They don't treat sleep like an optional luxury. They treat it like a weapon. They don't treat exercise like punishment. They treat it like regulation. They don't treat breathing like a last resort. They treat it like training because stability is a system, not a wish. And the most powerful part of training in the dark is this. Emotionally strong people keep promises to themselves, even small ones, especially small ones, because every broken promise tells your mind you can't trust you. And every kept promise tells your mind you are safe in your own hands. That's how confidence is built, not by hype, by evidence. Evidence that you do what you said you would do. Evidence that you can endure discomfort. evidence that you can pause instead of react, evidence that you can say no and mean it, evidence that you can face reality and move forward. This is why emotionally strong people seem calm, because their calm is earned. They've built it. Now, if you want to become emotionally strong, stop searching for one big breakthrough. Start building your quiet training routine. Choose one discomfort a day. Practice one pause a day. Name one emotion clearly when it rises. Do one honest audit at night. Keep one promise to yourself, no matter how small, and over time your nervous system will change. Your identity will change. Your life will change, because you will stop being someone who reacts to pressure and become someone who is prepared for it. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So what part of your life have you been avoiding because it feels uncomfortable? What small training could you start today that would make you stronger in private and steadier in public? When you feel intense emotion rise next time, will you run from it, or will you name it, face it, and learn from it? And if you began keeping promises to yourself starting now, what kind of unshakable person would you become a month from today? Chapter 6. The calm becomes your legacy. You've already learned that emotional strength is built quietly, not performed loudly. You've seen how the pause turns chaos into choice, how boundaries protect your peace, how acceptance stops you from fighting reality, and how training in the dark creates a nervous system that can handle pressure without breaking. Now we bring it all together, because the real goal isn't to feel strong for a moment. The goal is to become the kind of person whose calm changes everything around them. Emotionally strong people don't just survive storms. They become shelter in them. They become the person others can rely on when life turns sharp, not because they have perfect lives, but because they have practiced becoming steady. They don't need to control everyone. They don't need to be right in every conversation. They don't need to win every battle. They move through the world with a quiet authority that says, I belong to myself. And when you belong to yourself, you stop being owned by moods, opinions, setbacks, or fear. This final chapter is about legacy. Not the kind written on a plaque, the kind written into your character, the kind people feel when they're around you, the kind that lives on in the way you handle pressure, the way you love, the way you lead, and the way you recover. Because emotional strength is not a single skill. It's a way of living. Think about the strongest people you've ever met. Not physically strong, not socially loud. The emotionally strong ones. The ones who could be disappointed and still speak with dignity. The ones who could hear criticism and still keep their posture. The ones who could face loss and still move forward without becoming bitter. The ones who didn't collapse when life didn't cooperate. Those people had something in common. They didn't outsource their stability. They didn't hand their emotional state to strangers, to circumstances, to traffic, to messages, to delays, to disrespect, to social media, to one bad conversation. They didn't live like their mood was something that just happened to them. They lived like their mood was something they governed. That is what you've been building across these chapters. You built a foundation by choosing a calm baseline and telling yourself the truth early. You learned that emotions are signals, not commands, and that a few seconds of restraint can protect your future. You learned to check the story before you act on it and to keep your peace protected through invisible boundaries. You learn to stop arguing with reality, to accept without surrendering, and to separate what happened from what it means. You learn to train in the dark, to choose discomfort on purpose, to name emotions precisely, and to keep promises to yourself. Now you turn those habits into a personal code, because emotionally strong people don't just react less. They live more intentionally. They don't wake up asking, "What do I feel like doing today?" They wake up asking, "What kind of person am I becoming today?" That shift changes everything. It's the difference between a life driven by emotion and a life directed by identity. Identity is the anchor. When you know who you are, you don't negotiate with weakness as easily. You don't entertain the same old excuses. You don't keep lowering your standards because it's convenient. You don't abandon yourself when things get uncomfortable. You don't chase quick relief at the cost of long-term respect. You hold the line, even when nobody is watching, especially when nobody is watching. Let me tell you about an old teacher named Mr. Menon. Mr. Menon taught at a school where students tested limits every day. Some were kind, some were difficult. Some came from chaos at home and brought that chaos into the classroom. Many teachers burned out. Many lost their patience. Many took the disrespect personally. But Mr. Menon was different. He was calm in a way that felt like gravity. Not soft. Not weak, calm like a mountain. One afternoon, a student tried to embarrass him. Loud comment, mocking tone. The class reacted the way classes do, laughter, whispers, eyes waiting for the explosion. The student wanted a war. He wanted the teacher to lose control to prove he could be shaken. Mr. Menon didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult the student. He didn't punish out of ego. He just paused, looked at the student with steady eyes, and said quietly, "You're having a hard day. Sit down. We'll talk after class." The room fell silent. The student sat down, confused. The energy shifted, not because of fear, because of respect. After class, Mr. Menon spoke to him privately, not as an enemy, as a leader. He asked what was going on. The student admitted things at home were bad. He had come to school ready to fight the world. Mr. Menon didn't excuse the behavior. He set a boundary. He made it clear what was acceptable. But he didn't humiliate him. That student changed over time. Not overnight, but over time. And years later, as an adult, he returned to visit Mr. Menon and said, "That day you didn't react. That's when I realized I couldn't control you. And then I realized I needed to learn how to control myself." That's legacy. Your calm teaches people what is possible. Your restraint shows others a new standard. Your steadiness becomes a mirror that invites them to rise. And make no mistake, this is hard. It's easy to be calm when everything is going your way. It's easy to speak respectfully when people are kind. It's easy to be disciplined when you feel motivated. Emotional strength is proven in pressure. It is proven when you are tired, when you are triggered, when you are misunderstood, when you are disappointed, when you are tempted to react the old way. And that's why emotionally strong people live by one quiet principle. They don't make permanent decisions in temporary emotional states. They don't send the angry message. They don't quit on the hard day. They don't burn bridges because pride got injured. They don't destroy what they spent years building because of one intense moment. They pause, they breathe, they regulate, they choose. They let the storm pass before they decide where to walk. That is maturity. That is mastery. Now, if you want to carry this forward, you need more than ideas. You need a standard you can live by. So here is a simple code you can keep, not as a quote, but as behavior. When emotion rises, I pause. When my mind tells a story, I check it. When chaos knocks, I control access. When life changes, I accept and adapt. When discomfort appears, I train through it. When I fall short, I learn and return. That's the cycle, that's the system. And here's the truth that makes it even more powerful. Emotional strength isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you practice. Like fitness, like skill, like discipline. Some days you'll do it well, some days you'll slip. But every time you return, you strengthen the identity you're building. And slowly, without even noticing, you become someone different. You become harder to provoke. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't get hijacked. You become more peaceful, not because life is perfect, but because you have standards. You become more confident, not because you win every time, but because you trust yourself. You become more grounded. Not because the world is stable, but because you are. And this changes your relationships. Emotionally strong people don't beg to be chosen. They choose carefully. They don't chase attention. They build presence. They don't argue to be understood. They communicate with clarity. They don't cling out of fear. They connect from strength. They don't tolerate disrespect to keep peace. They enforce peace with boundaries. They don't pretend to be okay. They handle what's real. And this changes your work. You stop panicking under pressure. You start performing with steadiness. You stop reacting to setbacks like they are the end. You start treating them like training. You stop living in procrastination fueled by fear. You start taking action fueled by identity. And this changes your inner world. Your mind becomes quieter because you stop feeding it chaos. Your heart becomes lighter because you stop carrying what isn't yours. Your body becomes calmer because your nervous system learns that you are safe with you. That is the real win, not success, not applause, not a perfect image. The win is being able to live inside your own skin without constantly fighting yourself. Now it's time for the call to action, because an audiobook can inspire you, but it cannot change you. Only you can do that. So here is what you do next. You stop waiting for a perfect moment to start. You stop demanding motivation before you move. You stop treating discipline like a punishment and start treating it like freedom. You begin with small choices that prove you are serious. You practice the pause today in something small. You set one boundary today calmly without explanation. You accept one reality today without arguing. You train in the dark today when nobody cares. You keep one promise today, especially if it's boring. Because those are not small things. Those are the bricks. That's how the calm becomes permanent. That's how emotional strength becomes your identity. And one day, you'll look back and realize something quietly incredible. The things that used to shake you don't shake you anymore. The things that used to trigger you don't control you anymore. The things that used to drain you don't reach you the same way anymore. Not because the world got softer, because you got stronger. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. So as you step into the rest of your life, what kind of person are you choosing to become when nobody is watching? Where in your life do you need to pause instead of react, to hold the line instead of surrender, to accept instead of resist, to train instead of escape? What boundary would protect your peace starting today? And what promise to yourself will you keep this week no matter what? And when the next storm arrives, will you let it decide who you are? Or will you stand steady and prove that your calm is no longer a moment, but your legacy?